and welcome to another knitting video. This time a little bit late in the evening. I am home alone. Brian has been very busy getting his search and rescue certification, and so it's taken him out of the house a lot. And I find myself on these evenings wanting to be as cozy as possible and kind of cuddle up on bed and knit and watch a TV show. And tonight I feel a little bit chatty, so I thought it would be a good time to give you all an update on my knitting. So currently I am knitting a new pair of socks. This is Emily's favorite socks, and so far I'm not very far along, obviously, but I've been having a lot of fun with this pattern because she opens up opportunities for so much customizing. She talks about having a heel cuff or not, a cuff at the ankle or not having a cuff, or doing whatever size you want and mixing up your colors as much as you want. And it's just really fun, and I'm super excited to be doing this. So I am doing a cuff, and this is just a 1x1 ribbing. And then when we go to the body of the sock, we'll be changing, I think, to 3 knits and 1 purl, which will be a cool, I think it'll look really cool. I have a contrasting color at the very top. It's this, all of the yarns that I have for this project are viola yarns. This is, I believe, a Canadian dyer that will unfortunately not be dyeing yarn anymore, is my understanding. And so these are some of the last colors that they have available in their shop, and I'm a little bit bummed about that. I wish I had discovered them earlier because these colors are so beautiful. And the thing that I really like, it's something that I'm always kind of obsessed with when yarn shopping, is I love when the dyes look as if the pigments weren't fully mixed. And so there's these little, like, I don't know if I can pick it up on camera very well, but there's these little flecks of random colors, very subtle, and they feel more like happy accidents, like the pigments did not get mixed there in that particular spot. And so you get to see some of the colors that make up the dye. That's how I perceive it, and that makes me really happy. I like those little more organic imperfections, I suppose, even though I think this is clearly intentional from the dyer. I don't know what the colors are. I think they're all just numbers. I think this might be number 1. This might be number 28. This might be number 3 or 4. There's not that many available anymore, so I'll post a link down below anyways to the yarn shop, and hopefully you'll find something you're wanting if you are shopping. Now, I have had a very challenging knitting week. Since finishing my shawl, actually, things have just been kind of challenging. And I don't know if it's partly due to completing a pretty big project, or maybe it's just a mix of things, to be honest. I have, well, been in limbo. I had planned on knitting a sweater. In fact, I spent a couple months deliberating over what sweater pattern and what yarns I was going to use, and I finally decided to do the Weekender sweater by Andrea Mowry, and I purchased my yarn. And then a week later, I got an email saying that the yarn was back ordered, and I have no idea when that yarn's going to come in. So I feel a little disappointed and a little frustrated. Had I known that the yarn was not in the shop and not available, I would have worked toward a different pattern or project. I would have picked different yarns to use, maybe. I don't think I would have bought it, to be honest, because I'm just a little bit impatient sometimes. Anyways, so in the meantime, I was working on a pair of socks, which I will show you. That's a whole other thing. And not inspired at all and not excited at all to be working on those socks. So I pulled out a skein that I had ordered for a hat a while ago, the Honey Steady Beanie, also a pattern by Andrea Mowry. The yarn that I ordered is Lichen and Lace. It is the rustic heather base and in the color Pollen. And oh my gosh, this yarn is spectacular. I am madly in love with it. I've showed it before. It is such a beautiful, rich color, and I know it's not going to represent as well as it should, as well as it deserves, because oh my gosh, this yarn is glorious. It sometimes looks more acidic green. Sometimes it looks more mustard yellow, and sometimes in the shadows appear orange. It's really interesting. It's a very saturated, very deep and rich, and oh man, I am obsessed with this color. So I started the beanie, and then I pulled it out, and then I started it again, and then I pulled it out, and then I started it again. I put a lifeline in and pulled it back a couple of times and decided that I was not ready to work on that project. The Honey Steady Beanie has both brioche and cable knits. I have never learned either of those prior to this beanie, and learning those two different techniques simultaneously was really challenging for me. I feel like I had a fairly good grasp at cable knits. I think they're pretty straightforward. I could see the direction, where they were going, what the purpose of my actions was, what the end result would be. Brioche felt a little bit more ambiguous and very much out of context. So I couldn't, all the steps that I was taking to create the brioche texture or pattern, I couldn't visualize. I didn't know the direction I was heading. I felt very, very blind. And so I think that it would just be better if I isolated those two techniques in different projects and learned them independently and kind of get a good grasp on those concepts before blending them together in one project. But I didn't want to put this on hold because I am so obsessed with this particular yarn, and I was happy to shelf the project, but not happy to shelf this yarn. I also really love the texture of this yarn. It's very rustic. It's soft, but there's some texture that just makes it feel old world, less processed. I don't know, it's wonderful. So I scoured Ravelry for a pattern and found one. And I forget what it's called, and I forget the pattern designer, but I'll post a link down below to that. And it is for a sweater. Of all things, after spending months deliberating on which sweater to do, within the span of an hour, I picked out a pattern and started a sweater. This one, however, has Colorwork, and so this was as much as I could do on the project before needing my next color. So I had to place an order at Lichen and Lace, which is a Canadian dyer, for the yarn, the rest of the yarn for this sweater. And I forget the color that I got, but it's from the same base, and it's also very rich and looks very saturated and pigmented, and I bet it's going to be glorious. It's a brown, and the pattern has floral, like a little floral design as it shifts from this color down to the brown color. So while I was waiting, I was like, oh, I gotta do a project. I need a project. I decided, well, maybe I could practice color work and knit up some socks with all of the leftover yarns that I have. And so I did. And look at how beautiful this is. I'm really proud of this little swatch, even though it is kind of a failure. Not a failure because I did learn a lot, but unfortunately my tension is too tight, which is something that can happen with stranded color work because you have all of these floats that tend to be tight. I was also knitting this with double pointed needles, and I think my gauge is just generally a little bit tighter already, especially when you're going from one needle to the next. I'm always sensitive of having gaps in between all of the double pointed needles, and so my tension gets particularly tight in those areas. Anyways, I can't fit this on my foot, unfortunately, so I had to abandon it. And I didn't have the heart to pull it out because I was just so in love and proud of all the work that I had put into it. Now, the funny thing is, I then went onto YouTube to search for tutorials and information about stranded color work and discovered that it's much more complicated than I initially expected. When I first started this sock, I was naive and full of confidence. And now that I know more about the technique, I feel a little bit of trepidation, a little less confident, and reluctant almost to try again. We'll see. What I do think I will do if I start this sock again is after the cuff here, switch to one size up in my needles to help a little bit with gauge, and then just be more cognizant of my tension. But it's still a lot of work, and there's a lot of techniques that I did not employ when I did this that I feel like I should employ so that I can manage my yarns better, because they were getting twisted and tangled fairly frequently. So I mentioned earlier some socks that I'm just not jiving with. These are more DRK everyday. I had already finished one. Ugh. I really don't like how they look. This makes it's like, it looks like confetti barf. It's chaos and overstimulating, and I don't like it, and I don't like how the colors read, and it's driving me nuts, which is too bad. This is a beautiful yarn, and it's wonderful to work with, and the colors are so pretty. I really love the colors a lot, but I don't like seeing them knit up. Like, I like it like this. I liked it as a skein. I mean, I like it. I enjoy looking at it when I'm knitting it, and I think it looks pretty super close up, but I don't like the way it looks from far away, and I don't like how there's these more apparent blocks of color. It just kind of bothers me. If the colors were not so different from each other, I think I would enjoy it a lot more, but just like I said, it like reads like confetti barf to me. The socks that I'm currently wearing, these are another DRK everyday. This is a variegated yarn too, but it's really subtle, and I like it. It's like they're like happy little accidents rather than just like blah, all the colors. So it's good to know. It's a lesson of learning. I put this block of color at the top hoping that it would subdue it a little bit, and really I think that was a bad decision. I think it just makes it look even more chaotic and even more like blah. So I have been plugging away at the second sock, but I feel a little conflicted because it's not inspiring. I don't like the way they look. It will function as a sock. I'll be able to wear them. When I wear them with boots, you'll only see this part of it, but ugh, I'm just not that excited to work on it. I really, yeah, not that excited. So while I'm waiting in limbo for my sweater, my 2 sweater batches of yarn to arrive in the mail, I really want to work on this so bad too. It's like, it hurts. Feeling very impatient. I finally decided to work on a new pair of socks. I was kind of feeling stubborn. I didn't want to start another pair of socks while I was still working on those other ones. But man, I don't like doing that. And I was feeling a little bummed to not have a project to be super inspired by. And I mean, it's just become such a part of my daily routine. So here we are. I'm kind of found some knitting peace again, and it feels good. I have 2 more projects that I'm kind of wow, I think that was a really crazy face. I only caught a glimpse on the screen. I was like, whoa. I feel a little crazy. I have 2 new projects that I would like to queue up. One is another shawl, because believe it or not, now that I have had plenty of opportunity to wear the last shawl I made, the only shawl I've ever made, it's really wearable. I love having a shawl. It's so much fun. It's such a great accessory and really versatile. And now that the dust has settled on the project and I've had an opportunity to absorb it and contemplate the project in its entirety, I have concluded that I really like knitting shawls and would like to knit another shawl. So I have one already picked out. I'll post a link down below to that pattern. And I would like to work on a cardigan again. And I have that pattern picked out already. And of course, my queue does change a lot. It kind of ebbs and flows because I don't do all the projects at once. My ideas and thoughts and moods shift a little bit throughout the months. So I might not end up doing the cardigan and shawl, but I might. I kind of like the idea of it. I think it would be really fun. So that's where we're at. And thank you all for hanging out with me and keeping me company on this quiet, lonely evening. Lonely sounds so dramatic. I have the company of Fig, Bean, and Dot. I am surrounded by wonderful little lives. Anyways, I've said too much. Good night, everyone.